entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you. And stay woke, bitches.
I questioned whether I should edit the profanities out, but it's 2018. I think we've all heard everything by now, so I think this video is probably, illustrates how important it is we have a dialogue about fighting false news and strategies to combat digital misinformation. In 2018, information travels instantly, including misinformation, disinformation, and of course that phrase, fake news. Increasingly, the public doesn't know whom to trust as politicians discredit traditional media, influencers give credence to false rumors, and our own friends and family unknowingly spread untruths. Incorrect information can damage brands, it can complicate natural disasters, and it can even sway elections. My name's Anthony Schopp. I'm the co-founder of Social Driver and chairman of the National Digital Roundtable. I'm really excited to see all of you here today because you wouldn't be here waking up early for this conversation if you, well, I guess it's not that early, but somewhat early for some of us if you didn't recognize the importance of the conversation that we're having today. The National Digital Roundtable is the premier convener of digital innovators, leaders, and policy shapers. Our mission is to educate and inform professionals in a variety of fields and disciplines about the technology, trends, and tactics that are transforming how society interacts with the world around them. I'd like to say a few thanks before we get started. First and foremost to our amazing host, the Museum and the Freedom Forum. This is a great venue, of course, beautiful, wonderful venue. Thank you, Barbara, but also a really symbolic venue for the work that you all do and the conversation that we're having today. And we also wouldn't be able to do this if we didn't have great promotion partners who helped us to spread the word. We have the Institute for Education. IFE also helped us get Monica on the panel, so thank you to Kathy for that. PRSA, National Capital Chapter, International Association of Business Communicators, DC Chapter, Washington Women in PR, and Social Driver. So thank you to all those organizations, and thank you for being here. Please give our partners and give yourselves a round of applause. I really also want to make sure to thank our amazing panel. I have their Twitter handles up there. If you want to use a hashtag for this event, you can use hashtag Digital Roundtable. And we'll be introducing them in more detail later. But we have Barbara McCormack here from the Museum, Joe Khawly from Alhurra, Monica Enqvist from the Embassy of Sweden, and Lauren Lawson-Zilai from Goodwill Industries International. It's a really fantastic panel of experts who know a lot about this topic, so you are in for a treat. So I'd like to just start off by setting the stage a little bit. I recently came back from China. I was there for a month, and I heard many times that you could see the Great Wall of China from space. I'm wondering how many of you have heard that you can see the Great Wall of China from space? A lot of you. Well, turns out that's not actually true. It's, I think, a very old example of misinformation because the rumor dates back to the 1930s, before anyone ever even went to space or before there was a satellite in space. So it's funny how these rumors and false information can be quite persistent over time. If we look back at the speed of news not too long ago, 1800s, when President Lincoln was assassinated, does anybody know how long it took for that information to reach London? Any guesses? You said 2 weeks. Yeah, that's good. That's exactly right. It took about 2 weeks. And I was thinking, what are some of the things that have happened just in the last 2 weeks that I've noticed in the headlines? And the first three I thought of all even started with the same letter, K. I thought Kavanaugh, I thought Kanye, and I thought the journalist who we've been reading a lot about, terrible situation. So we have really a lot of, it's hard to imagine 2 weeks for such big news to get around the world. Melania wears a hat and you know in about 30 seconds, right? So it's really kind of a strange world where information travels so fast, but not only true information in news, also false information. And you know, this is not an issue that just arose with the last presidential election. Here's some examples related to fluoride, some issues that I've been working on for about 5 years. And these are the most popular posts on social media right now related to fluoride, and they all are misinformation, disinformation, I would say in some ways, which we'll hear the difference between those later. When your opponents are comparing you to Nazis, you know that usually they're probably not going to change their mind very quickly. And that's sort of what we see with these posts. We did some work with Harvard and mapped out these conversations around fluoride and misinformation around vaccines as well. And what we found was a couple key takeaways. On the left, you can see how the information travels in that visual. And the key takeaway here is blogs and non-mainstream media tends to travel through many more people and has a much longer tail than traditional news. And that tends to be where a lot of this misinformation lives. If we look on the right, we can see that conversation being mapped. And what you notice there is that people, in some ways, are very far apart. You have this middle area. They call this, the Harvard speak is betweenness centrality, which really just sort of means the swing voters, right? You have a small number of people in the middle who can be swayed. And then you have extremes on either side that are deeply entrenched in their ideals. And what we learned is to approach this, you have to amplify and elevate the voices that are the correct voices, suppress and probably not directly engage with the people who disagree with you. Again, if they're comparing you to Nazis, you're probably not going to change their mind in a tweet. And in the swing voter folks in the middle, that betweenness centrality zone, you do have some opportunity to amplify the positive messages to move them over. So this is a problem that existed before the election, and fluoride, I think, is a great example. And we can see this is also a global challenge right now, which we'll hear a little bit more about. We can see with WhatsApp in particular a lot of news lately about what's happening. Now, there are some great organizations fighting back. Because this is a particularly busy month for the American Red Cross, they weren't able to join us, and I wanted to pull a few really relevant examples of what they're doing with their challenges. The first is that when they face claims that, for example, they aren't present in disaster situations, they fight back in one way using Facebook Live and getting real messages out, because it's much more difficult to say that they're not there when they're live streaming and showing real people on the ground making a difference. This is an example where a post showed a supposedly lousy meal that the Red Cross was giving, and they were able to do research to find this is actually an image from a news article from many years before related to school lunches. So they were able to show that's not us, that's actually an image that was used before in the news, and they leveraged a third-party validator, Snopes, to disprove the claims and get that message out. And lastly, trolls is a challenge that I think a lot of folks face now, and when they have trolls attacking their work and saying that they're not doing a great job, they actually use that as an opportunity to not respond directly, but to galvanize their supporters. Because it's much more effective when your supporters stand up and your supporters speak up on your behalf than when your organization or your brand does it themselves. So a few key lessons, and we'll hear some more later. I also just wanted to highlight, lastly, we have more than a dozen initiatives from organizations trying to validate news, trying to identify what's true. Some of these are putting seals of approval on news. And you can see it's a really crowded space right now with all these new initiatives popping up. So there are a lot of organizations that are working to make a difference here, but there's also some challenge that they're stepping on each other's toes and they're not working very closely together. So what we're going to do today is start with the macro level. We're going to talk about the challenge of false information, how we can educate the public. But then with our last two panelists, we're going to move more to the micro level and look at specific tactics that organizations are using to address these challenges when they affect them and when they affect their work. So to start, I'd like to invite Barbara McCormack to join us. I'm going to kick off with a question as you wake your way up here, Barbara. First of all, I just have to say thank you for hosting us at the museum. You're responsible for educating thousands of both educators and I think 10 million students about issues related to media literacy and a free press. So can you please set the stage for us? What do we all need to know when it comes to false information? But first, can you just tell us a little bit about the museum, the Freedom Forum, and what you do here? Thank you. I'll leave the clicker up here for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Well, welcome to the museum. Again, I'm Barbara McCormack. I'm the Vice President of Museum Education, which is part of the Freedom Forum Institute. The Freedom Forum Institute is the education arm of the museum. So we're all kind of one big happy family, but that's how it all fits. So good questions. Anthony has asked me to kind of set this situation up, and he's like, you got 5 minutes. I'm going to try to do my best to do that. What we do here is we're in charge of and specialize in public education. So not only do I work on educating students, middle school through college, but we have public programs and discussions and panels like this on the topic. I travel the world, just back from Dhaka, doing sessions for religious leaders, community leaders, government officials. This is a global issue. Everyone's trying to fight it and look for the best way to do that. And in our hopes, our approach here at the museum would be to do it in a way that does not also infringe on freedom of expression and hinder our rights. So it's a very slippery slope. So today's information landscape, it's 24/7, it's polarizing, it's fast-paced, it's breaking. Anthony hit on some of this information. That's Shower Rat. I love to start with Shower Rat. You guys love it? I wish this was real. Shower Rat might be a little bit of sloppy reporting. Shower Rat, we think, might actually not be a rat at all, but a Pacarena from Peru, and that he's not enjoying a nice bath, but maybe this soap is an irritant, and this poor animal is trying to get it off of his skin. But we're also, very polarizing, as you see here in my example, a Twitter example of and I have to say this because I never assume anything. This is fake. Of a Seattle Seahawks player with a flag, burning U.S. flag, photoshopped into his hands while his teammates celebrate around him. This is actually from a game that they won, and this image was used to convey disinformation. People are ripe. The people who are most ripe to believe that, probably this showed up in their inboxes. So fake news. People create fake news for 4 basic reasons. They do it to hoax. They do it to entertain, like my Shower Rat. They do it to make money. A lot of times you click on a headline and you're going to see nice little companies getting paid on this outskirts there every time you click on it. But most nefariously, they do it to influence your actions and your beliefs. Just as my example with the flag burning there. I'm trying to distract from NFL players protesting treatment from African-American men in law enforcement, to making it an issue of not being patriotic or and burning the flag. So those were people who were providing, pushing disinformation. I use the term fake news, and I know that some of you are probably like, I can't believe she's saying that, and some academics would say no. But that's your entry point into the discussion. Again, I travel the globe, and when I meet people on planes, they're like, what are you doing? So I'm going to do a lecture on disinformation. Oh, misinformation. I'm going to go to, in media literacy. I'm going to do a lecture about fake news. That I understand. Starting with that, but peeling back the layers to discuss what that means, we think is really important here. The access point doesn't matter as long as my learning objectives are met. So fake news is very simple. It's a lie, it's made up, and it's made to look like news often. And it was easy to tell at one point. It's getting harder, as you can see. In these examples, I have teepees burning, police burning teepees. Black Lives Matter thugs stopping rescue efforts getting to hurricane victims. And the scariest of all, this had me last year almost, the Reese's peanut butter cups. I was waiting in line to get my dog at the groomers, and the gentleman taking my money actually offered me candy from the dish and said, "You better get these, because they're going to stop selling those." As I filled my pockets with candy, I thought, what? Why? He said, "Allergies." I'm like, really? What's Chip going to do? What's Peter Pan? I was processing, but the fear, I was still shoving candies in my pockets. And I quickly looked at my phone, and I could tell in seconds that, no, this was not real. But I shoved more in my pocket, just in case that I found out, indeed, I was wrong, because I was not going to get caught off guard. Misinformation deals with what we're going to hit on next here, deals with incorrect facts. And disinformation is intentional. Wrong facts. So it's really pretty simple, but we throw out these big terms and it can really shut down conversations before they ever even begin. What is not fake news? Bias is not fake news. Some people want us to believe that. Twisting the facts and presenting biased information comes with its own set of issues, but it's not fake. It's someone's perspective, and it's important to be able to understand what that is. Negative news is not fake news. Anthony was hitting on this just a little bit. Some of our politicians, some just trolls and troublemakers out there would like you to believe that that negative news is always fake. Anthony, even though we have technology and can now see that there is no wall from space, we probably still have to convince some folks that that's not the case, because they might think that that is a twisted or a photograph, or it's been edited. And also, and this happens a lot, sloppy reporting or mistakes in reporting. That is not fake. It comes again with its own problems, but it's not fake news. It is a mistake. Journalists are moving at a high pace. They're putting out news faster than ever on platforms that really were not much intended to spread news. Business models have shifted. They're trying to deal with the new landscape. Just so you know, this picture here has been identified as Robert Mugabe's mansion. It's not the case. That's Dr. Dre's house. So again, just sloppy reporting and the impact that can have. It's going to take a three-player solution to this problem. 3 players are contributing to the problem, and we have to tackle each of these to solve it. So you have the news producers. Those are the people who go out and gather stories, package it, and push it out to us. You know, they are having trouble fighting sloppy content, some mistakes in reporting. They're also seen as blurring the line between fact and opinion. We now see them as pundits. We now see them sharing their opinions. This can cause some mistrust issues with the public. And when we have these biased shows, that also is causing a lot of mistrust with the public. With our news aggregators, they have these unseen algorithms that impact what comes in and shows up in our news feeds. We like to think that social media has given more people a voice than ever, but do we know how to actively use that voice, effectively use that voice, if we don't understand how these algorithms are working? I'm not sure that we truly are contributing the way that we think in such a positive way. There's also bots and other ways that we can increase this amplification to make something look like it's more important or more of a deal than it really is. And then consumers, we are not faultless in all of this. We are taking in so much information every day and trying to manage it that we have developed bad habits and lack of critical thinking, and we're moving too quickly. 59% of us are willing to share information based on a headline alone and never clicking and reading a story. These are the habits that we need to stop. I like to just start with, if I can't change, I'm not trying to change your mind, but if you cannot verify something, for the love of all things holy, don't share it. Just keep it to yourself, right? Then we can go a long way. We can improve the information cycle. So we see Anthony identified what some of our producers are trying to do to help fix this problem. The Trust Project, the seals of approval, they're trying to be more transparent. They're trying to do higher quality reporting, remove bias, et cetera. We see what's happening with Facebook and Google, again, trying to help the consumer figure out what is good and what is not. And then I want to talk about the last, which is consumer education and empowerment. I think that here at the museum, we believe that's the foundation for all efforts that we're going to make on this front, is empower the consumer to make decisions. I'll scooch to the next one here, because we have proof that top-down solutions don't necessarily work all the time. And one of my, we have a waning trust in the press. 57% of U.S. voters do not trust Facebook or Google, so that's of our tech companies. And a Gallup poll found, and from 2017, found that 41% of U.S. adults, only 41% trust the media. And then the trust scale from a report from 2018 from the Knight Foundation and Gallup, they determined that the average media trust score among U.S. adults was a 37 on a scale of 0 to 100. That's not very high. We have to work on that. And that was based on their overall opinion of news media, perception of bias in coverage, and whether the media are careful to separate news from opinion. Now, governments are starting to intervene. I just got back from DACA. While I was there, they passed a Digital Security Act, which is going to start, slowing down consumer access to digital media. It could impact the press negatively. But I want to just look at one quick example that Anthony had set up here, and that's the WhatsApp example. In the last year and a half, the 4G revolution in India enabled 200 million more users online. You know this story, right? From these users came the spread of fake news on this popular platform, WhatsApp. The spreading of this fake news has led to mob killings. The Indian government intervened. They stepped in and they called to WhatsApp to start regulating these solutions. They asked them to label messages as forwarded instead of composed by a sender. They limited forwarding to 5 recipients in India and 20 to the rest of the world. Only group admins can send messages, and you can now mark suspicious content. Despite all of these changes, mob killings continue. I think proving to us that these top-down interventions do not necessarily work. Technology will change. Trolls will find workarounds. They're going to figure out a way to spread disinformation. So the key are the 2 building blocks, I think, to fixing this problem for media literacy are personal responsibility. That's on the part of the consumer to understand their role in the information cycle and only on sending that quality information. Also personal responsibility, our journalists reporting quality news, helping consumers do a better job. And then really support for community education. How are we going to help educate the consumers? Who should do it? Should the journalists educate the public? How well is that going to go? No. Should Google? Should Facebook? Should our teachers? Yeah. So it's supporting the education community, and I'd like to put out there public institutions like the museum, where when you're nonpartisan, you're non-biased, and we have expertise in public education. We have a digital repository, and we do these programs all the time. We have to work together with our educators and with these other players in the information cycle to help improve the skills, consumer skills, when sorting through information. So I'm going to end there because I know these guys here, my fellow panelists, have some great content. They're going to speak directly to what communication professionals can do. But I'd like to just leave you with, be positive contributors to the information cycle. Part of what we're doing is teaching consumers where to find information. So if they can come to your sites, trusted sites, and look for facts, that's always going to help the consumer combat misinformation. So I'm going to step away and pass it on to Joe. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks.
Thank you.
We know it's not easy. And you're now an anchor, but before that, you were the social media producer at Alhurra TV. So from the perspective of a storyteller, what do we need to know about the dangers of false news and what all of us can do about it? And if you can, just start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and Alhurra for those who aren't familiar.
All right. Well, Alhurra is one of the entities of the BBG, which is is overseen by the Congress, and we are an American outlet, but we broadcast for the Middle East. We try to promote the U.S. diplomacy. I'm pretty sure you are familiar with the radio, Voice of America. It's the same entity, but we are a TV channel. And I was promoted recently to a news anchor. I'm pretty sure that all of you like to go to brunches. I do. DC is known for that. One time I was sitting at a brunch and there was like a table with a family, a man and his wife, and I was seeing this man with a grumpy face. I was like, in my mind, I mean, it's brunch time. Take something and then have fun. And I was seeing all the time his wife, you know, telling her something to go and bring him something. So I was seeing her going and coming back, and he's just sitting like this, like, wow, what a gentleman. In my mind, I was like, we started discussing and debating with my friends about this scene that we're seeing that, for me, it was not okay. And at the end, when this family was leaving, the man was on a wheelchair. So that was a lesson for me, not even to believe my own eyes. And now we are not only seeing fake news spread on social media and every news outlet, because either we are failing to do our own fact-checking, or because we just like to believe what we like to see. But the lesson here, and there's a saying in Arabic that says, believe half of what you see and don't believe anything you hear. And with this story, I'm gonna tell you guys that we can call it fake news. We can call it alternative facts. And we can call it false information, anything. But one thing is certain, we are, you and me, we are in an information war. Either we can be warriors or we can be victims. In the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna help you to be warriors. How about that? So we know that lies and those fake images spread really fast on social media. It's funny that 70%, that's a really high number of those information, they spread fast. But what's funny that the retweets on Twitter are more to be retweeted, 70% more than right information. And that is really, for me, was really appalling. And I'm pretty sure if you read this story back in 2016 in January, where there was like that story spread on all over news outlets that Barack Obama, and by the way, they spelled Barack wrong. He decided to remove, George Washington and put his face on the dollar bill. No, it's not gonna happen. And so one of the tricky designs that people are doing, and there are hackers, there are agents, foreign agents, and even countries behind these accounts. They try to trick you in a really smart way. Like, for instance, this website, during the 2016 elections, a lot of people, and some of them my friends, and sometimes myself, I shared because it's, oh my God, it's ABC. No, guys, it wasn't ABC. And we can see how the ABC logo is not perfectly circle, and it's not shiny because the ABC have like that shine on the logo. And then even it's abc.com.co, the ABC. So with a little bit of research on Google, we can find that those are not the right designs. And this was like a story. I know like NRA and arming is a very tricky topic in Washington and all over the country. But this was retweeted by one of the guys, and he said that look at the anti-NRA and anti-gun people. They want to, that's what they're gonna do with the Constitution. They wanna shred it. Well, guess what? That was a bot. It wasn't, but he got retweeted thousands of times. Look at the real picture. Nothing related to, they photoshopped it. But how can we know? Well, we'll talk about this later on. This is like another huge number, guys. I'm going to step here. So this is like 67% that we consume news right now, because everyone has, even my mom, she's like 64, and she follows like Facebook and all the news outlets on social media, and they don't have time to watch like 20 or 30 years ago. We have to sit at 6 or 7 or 8 p.m. to watch the news. Now we get the news directly to our smartphones. So how can we spot? One of the tools is Google. You have, guys, I thought it would be bigger, but this is one of the Google extensions. We can add it to our Google Chrome device, and then once we have it, every picture we have it. If you want to verify it, we can double click and then search Google for this image. And then we can check if just like the picture before, if it was a real or a fake or fabricated or photoshopped image. This is it. This is the better. So it's an easy tool. We can add it to our Google Chrome device on our laptops. Search Google for this image. Now, how to spot fake news. You have these, I handed you guys these 8 steps. I'm going to go quickly through them. We can first investigate the site, just as we said before, if it's a real, credible website, a news outlet, or no. Second, we can read just beyond the headlines. Sometimes we have a lot of clickbaits. Hillary Clinton is, partying with the devil, I don't know, and she wants you guys dead, I don't know, or she funded ISIS. All these like fake news, or WikiLeaks said. Okay, did you guys, the appalling story was one of my colleagues who said, WikiLeaks said that Hillary Clinton did this and this. I was like, did you read that document leaked by WikiLeaks? And he said, no, but it was shared on Facebook. It's like, thank you, which means it's not accurate. Even us, the peers of the news world, we fail sometimes, and we like, because of our biases, we like to fall into these traps. And again, we know that there's a lot of prominent news journalists out there, and we can check if those authors are real. And then even if we do not know them, copy-paste the name, and then check it on Google, check if this is a real person or a bot. And then, again, if the article has supporting sources. A lot of those stories, and I'm pretty sure you know about this 16-year-old guy from Macedonia. He created by himself those Facebook pages, and he was followed by millions in the United States. He was trying to target Republican voters, and he did. He was just like writing a clickbait headline, like we saw before, with no sourcing in the article at all. He just fabricated things from his mind. I will give him a credit of being a great author for a great, fiction book, but not for news. And then again, check the date. Is it something that we are, like the water story that we read before? A lot of these articles, they can surface, anytime, because anyone can share them. If you shared it, I can share it, and then my friends would share it, and then it becomes like, oh, it's a real story, it's new. And the water, like Dasani and Coca-Cola, a couple of weeks ago, they said they found a parasite in the Coca-Cola, Dasani bottled water, which was like totally fake news. I don't know, someone wrote it. But again, if we check that, the date, it went back to 10 years ago. And again, is it a joke? Sometimes people don't get satire, like The Onion. And I kid you not, I had a friend of mine living not in the United States. He sent me an article shared by The Onion on their Facebook page. And he's like, look what Hillary Clinton is doing. I was like, that is The Onion. Do you know what is that? So, some of us don't get the satire. And then again, our biases. I talked about this before. And I fall for it, you fall for it, everyone falls, we have to read as a professional sometime and as a reader, and not based on our biases. And then, a lot of checking news websites. This is a list of 10 best fact-checking websites. We can go through all of them. This is here, flagcheck.org, and then you have factcheck.org. One of the websites that I like is Hoax Slayer. If you go there, you would see hundreds and thousands of stories people share. They did not know that it was hoax, but these people, they take it and they do their own research, and they post those hoax stories like, I don't know, like climate change. This is the full list. And yes, everyone gets a manual, like Oprah says. You have that manual. The issue is like how we can internalize this. I got a tweet from one of the audience today, and he said how we can implement this. It's about each one of us. It's not, I mean, of course, the big chunk of the responsibility goes down to news outlets, and I don't know if most of the news outlets are prepared. If I am prepared, but we have to go through these steps every single time to make sure before sharing. Because before you share, we have to compare. And I believe it's gonna sound harsh from me, guys, but if you share a lie, it makes you a liar. In this information war era, we are liars if we share lies. And then there was a study how we can implement these. There's a behavioral tick, they said in science, when human beings, they like to sound honest and appeal honest. When we think of this, that we want to be honest, I guess we can try to check all these tools before we share. Thank you. Oh, no, wait. I wanted to show you that this story that was published on the New York Times, in the New York Times, and this person found that there's no right sources in that article, which means, look what they had to do. I can go back. So it's not playing, but I was about to show you how when you click on the website here that was shared by the New York Times and this person, when you click on it, it says the page is no longer available. And from an credible point of view, and to be accountable for what you did as a news outlet and as journalists, that was a wrong step. They were supposed to say that we misguided our readers, and we published this article that vaccines, are causing autism, and be accountable for the bad and false information. And this is the New York Times, guys. I'm not talking about any not known article or news outlet shared on Facebook. That was on their website. I'm gonna check because I'm coming from the Middle East. I've been living in the United States, in DC for 8 years, but this is a graph that shows how Jordan, Lebanon, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, and the UAE, they share their news. Facebook is still on the above, like #1 across all the platforms, but you can see how most of the Arabic countries in the Middle East, that's where they share the news. And it was recently, before coming here, I was checking what is the region or country that shares and consumes news from news outlets or social media. It turns out that the Middle East consumes and shares more news from social media rather than news outlets. And I don't know if this is scary or just like because we get easier information on the smartphones, but I believe that we have the responsibility before sharing anything to be warriors in this information war age that we live in. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I especially really liked that, showing us how to do the Google image search.
Thank you. Thank you for
I think that that's,
you pointed out.
I think it's a really good tool for us to use. I'd like to switch gears a little bit from sort of the big picture to some specific situations. And so we're going to turn to you, Monica. Monica's head of public diplomacy, press, and communications at the Embassy of Sweden. I know I said earlier to Joe, it's tough to be a journalist these days, and I think the same could be said of being a diplomat in Washington. Tough job these days. It's changed a lot, and maybe Twitter's to blame for that. As we go from sort of thinking about this problem globally and what we can do, but specific challenges that organizations have faced, could you share the challenges you faced at the embassy and what you did about it?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Of course. Thank you, Anthony. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes, so, well, you call it challenges. I also can call it that it's very positive. You know, working with diplomacy, we used to do events where we could reach 140 people. Today, we can reach millions through social media. So it's also a very good thing. But before I tell you a little bit about the case that Anthony wanted me to mention, I want to highlight what I do at the embassy and how we're working. So we are usually located in Georgetown, where we have House of Sweden, and that has been our public diplomacy venue for over 11 years. And back in the days, that was the venue for public diplomacy and a way to talk about different images of Sweden. But today, we often do events both online, we live stream our events and use this as a channel, as a venue, but use the dialogue that we can have on social media to continue. And so it's different campaigns around our events, and if we have a seminar about climate change, we also do a campaign on social media. So we still continue the dialogue and use the opportunity there. And also my job is, you know, to have a dialogue with the journalists and have a dialogue about different images of Sweden and make sure that it is the correct facts. And sometimes with the news spreading so quick, it can be a little bit problematic. But I honestly have to say I'm coming from Sweden, and we were the first country in the world with a freedom of press act. So we are very proud over the freedom of speech, but it can also become a little bit of a challenge when things are spread very quick. And I don't know if you heard about the situation 2 years ago, last night in Sweden it's called. Otherwise, I want to share a little bit about that. So what happened was that President Trump was talking at a rally in Florida a couple of weeks after his installation. And this was a Saturday night, and he mentioned Sweden. And he said, look what happened in Sweden last night. And the next day, I woke up of the phone ringing. And a journalist from all around the world was calling me and asked me, what happened in Sweden last night? And I was strolling around in my bedroom in pajamas and trying to figure out what's going on. And so it became very big, quick on social media, and it became very big, quick on different articles around the world. And for us, it was very important. You have to remember, this is just a couple of weeks after the installation. And for Sweden, the collaboration with USA is very important. So we felt like we need to figure out what's going on. And also, for us, it was important to not speculate. We don't want to send information that is not correct. So we just said that to everyone who called, that we don't know what the president is referring to, but we have also asked the US officials for an explanation. And as I mentioned, it became viral on social media. Everyone was speculating what was going on back home in Sweden on a Friday night, in both fun ways and other ways. After a couple of hours, the president answered by himself that he was referring to a piece he had seen on Fox, and that what he was referring to when he talked about what happened last night in Sweden. So the night before, on Friday night, Fox had sent a piece, and of course we looked into that piece and saw what it was about, and it was a lot of information that was not correct, and it was about migration and crime. But we felt like we want to use this spotlight. I think that is an important message. If you see information that's not correct, don't back away. Use the spotlight and share the correct information. But for us, it was important to share the correct information about Sweden. We were not going to talk bad about another country or about a news outlet. We were going to share the correct facts about Sweden. And we also were very sincere of sharing information that was also a challenge in Sweden. So not only positive information, but also negative information. So we shared the correct facts. And so we did a collaboration with our Swedish Foreign Ministry back home in Sweden. And of course with the Swedish Institute, and also our ministers at the government also talked about these issues. And we quickly did a homepage as well, because we thought it was very important to have something that we could share in the flows and in the comments on tweets when people were talking about this on social media. So the ministry back home set up a homepage where they said, okay, here we have some facts about these issues that were addressed. And that was very helpful for us too. Then we easily could share information about what people were arguing about on social media. It was a lot of things going on during these days. Very hectic days. And then as you see, this is one of our ministers who was sharing quotes about these issues as well. And we did a campaign called Correct Facts about Sweden. So I think it was like 20 different tweets and movies that we spread around. And also, let's see where we are. And also we felt it was important for us to stand up. So we shared a tweet that we said we look forward to inform the new administration about the Swedish immigration policies. And that went very viral. So then it started over again. And at this point, it has been viewed of 12 million people. And it has been retweeted almost 100,000 times. So, but we also, of course, used our venue, House of Sweden. We felt like, let's use this spotlight. So we opened a new exhibition about migration. And we did different activities. And if I should be very honest, I need to say that the migration exhibition was already planned. But we just made sure to put more programming around the exhibition. So we did a lot of events to highlight and address these issues. And we also invited school classes. We did workshops for students and did also campaigns on social media. And what's very interesting with this is that also we saw that a lot of journalists wrote about the correct facts about Sweden. And we asked the Swedish Institute, which is an agency back home, to do a survey about how is the image of Sweden a year after this. And actually what it turned out was that the image of Sweden actually had become better, because a lot of people had taken time to, they maybe saw something in news but wanted to know more. So their survey showed that the image of Sweden had become better after what happened. So I think that is something, it's a good example how we used something to turn it around and use the opportunity the spotlight gave us. Yep. Thank you.
I think that's a good example of turning lemons into lemonade. That's an American expression. Our next speaker is Lauren Lawson-Zilai from Goodwill. And Lauren, I think, we've talked about this. Online myths can be kind of like weeds. They can keep popping up even after you think they're eradicated years later. Goodwill and a number of other nonprofits have faced challenges with online myths and rumors, which affect your membership organizations around the country. Can you tell us about the challenges you've faced, but more importantly, how you have tackled them at Goodwill?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge we've been facing is a rumor called Think Before You Donate. And it started off as an email in 2005 and then morphed into a graphic, which has had billions of shares of impressions. The biggest challenge for us is that we've been facing this for 13 years, so let that sink in. We have certainly made some progress, but we're also realistic in that this won't go away. So like this woman, I hope you've done your research about Goodwill. Most of America thinks of Goodwill as a store, but I want to provide the context of how our stores relate to our mission. Goodwill takes your used items, such as your electronics, your books, and the items featured here, and we transform lives. We do that by selling the donated goods in stores and online, and we use the revenue to fund employment placement, job training programs, and community-based services such as childcare, transportation, financial education, and free tax prep. I'm sure it's not lost on you that Goodwill is an iconic brand. We've been featured for 3 years in the World Value Index, which measures the perception and awareness of more than 4,000 Americans based on their understanding of a nonprofit's mission and purpose. And we've been featured on 2 of Nonprofit Times surveys. One is America's Top 200 Charities, and the second is Forbes 20 Most Inspiring Companies. We were the only nonprofit featured on that list, and we were featured for 3 consecutive years. So one thing you may not be aware of is that we're not a top-down organization. We have 161 community-based independent organizations. They each have their own board of directors who governs that area. They appoint a president and CEO, and they operate the stores and donation centers in their territories. So they're really experts in their markets. They know the local economy, and they know their local job needs. Goodwill organizations facilitate learning opportunities, skills training, and they help people advance in their careers. We're responsible for 1 out of every 200 hires in the US, and that's based on US Department of Labor stats. So obviously Goodwill is all about jobs. So a viral rumor will certainly impact our reputation and our brand. The Think Before You Donate rumor started as an email, and it said, when you open up your wallets or your pockets to do good, know to whom you're donating. And then it morphed into a graphic, as mentioned, and it often resurfaces during times of natural disasters like hurricanes or during end-of-year giving. Has anyone seen this graphic, out of curiosity? No. It says that we have an owner, which we can't because we're a 501c3 organization, and it says his name is Mark Curran. So we've been around for 116 years. We've never been affiliated with anyone by that name. And despite extensive research, we don't know how this started. Unfortunately, there are several variations of this graphic, and this would be another example. This would be an example of someone who continues to perpetuate the bad information. So he's a self-proclaimed health advocate. He's editor of naturalnews.com. He refers to himself as Health Ranger, and he has a pretty substantial following of more than 130,000 people. He went so far as to create his own version of the graphic, which has the correct names of the CEOs with the exception of the Red Cross, and their photos, but the same bad information. And we have reached out to him numerous times on Facebook privately, and he ignores us and continues to share it because it gains traction and it gets a reaction. Prominent figures have fell victim to this false news. In 2012, Donald Trump tweeted that UNICEF CEO Carol Stern owned a Rolls-Royce, to which she responded, "Sorry, no Rolls, only a Prius. Fire your fact checker and help us save kids' lives." So she responded quickly and directly, as we all should in that type of situation. Reality star Bethany Frankel also bought into the rumor as recent as a year ago. Fighting this was really hard and challenging, and one of our first tactics was to create our own version of the graphic with a false stamp across it, and we mistakenly thought that would make it go away. Goodwill Industries International functions like a membership association. So as mentioned with the references earlier, we wrote a post for Snoops, for factcheck.org, for Fact or Fiction. We also reached out to our PR counterparts at the organizations that were mentioned favorably, because even though they were mentioned in a positive light, they still had misinformation about them. And then we reached out to Media Matters and National Consumers League because they're organizations who deal with the media and correct misinformation in the media. The strength of our strategy was really utilizing our collective network of Goodwill organizations. We did many of the traditional things that you would think of. We encouraged them to share the Snopes link. We gave them print ads, fact sheets about Goodwill, Facebook ads, and we equipped our store associates and gave them a level of media training because they are public facing, and this way they would have a knowledge base of knowing how to talk about Goodwill and our mission to the public. This is an example of how one Goodwill utilized the ad that we gave them and adapted it for their market. So they emphasize that they're a local nonprofit, and then they direct to their mission video. Despite all of these efforts more than a year ago, a lot of Goodwills were really feeling the brunt of this rumor. They were losing out on grant investment opportunities from major donors and investors. They were hearing from small, local, understaffed newsrooms who were actually doing news stories and reporting this out as fact. So we knew we needed a more aggressive strategy to help turn the tide and really help misinformed community members learn the truth. The graphic was being shared on social, so we created a series of turnkey social design templates and assets. And those included a style guide, graphics for sharing on Facebook and Twitter, a how-to guide for Photoshop, and we also created LinkedIn Pulse guides for the autonomous CEOs. We wanted them to have talkers and instructions, but we didn't want to give them the actual text of what they should say because we didn't want all the feeds to read the same way. These are examples of the social graphics that we use. So it starts with a myth and then ends with a fact. And then we expanded our internal photo library, which is known as Good Stock, and we aligned graphics to go with it. We also created motion graphics for short or long form videos. The intent of all of this was to make sure that we had one visual campaign to look at as if it was unified and one single campaign. Another facet of our outreach was to create a specific dedicated landing page on our website. We wanted community members to know that their donations make a meaningful impact in their local communities. So we had our Guide Star emblem featured throughout. We posted our annual report, which shows our sales, results, and impact. We also improved our search engine optimization so that when people were searching about the rumor, they would go directly to this page versus rumor mill websites. These are examples of some of the LinkedIn Pulse pieces. So people share these at multiple levels, from retail store associates to marketing and communication professionals and CEOs. From a public relations perspective, we took both a proactive and reactive approach. We had a letter to the editor, a news release, and then we had messaging as appropriate. We felt that this was a successful campaign, that we were really able to move the needle. Our goals and measurements were defined by our reach and impressions of our content. So we looked at how third-party ambassadors were refuting the rumor, what people were saying about Goodwill, both on our channels and on other channels, both positively and negatively. So we used our monitoring systems such as TalkWalker and Cision to measure that. And then we looked at the traffic to our website and our landing page. Since the launch of the materials on December 11th of last year, there have only been 20 mentions in the news, and that includes online, broadcast, and print news. In addition, there have only been 9 social media impressions, of which 4 have been negative. This graph demonstrates the blue slice shows that there is more than 80% of traffic going to our dedicated landing page, and that's from search traffic. So to us, this means that this unified campaign and coordinated campaign really made a difference and an impact. Another facet of our outreach was to reach out to legal counsel at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and I will talk to more of this in the Q&A. In summary, we know that this graphic will never go away. We're coming up on end-of-year giving time, so we know we need to continually revise and refine the graphics. We also learned that members, despite wanting autonomy, didn't have the tools in-house, so they didn't have Photoshop and struggled with using some of the tools that we gave them. So that was another lesson learned. And in closing, I would empower all of you, as you heard today, if you see your friends and family sharing this graphic on social, let them know it's factually inaccurate. And please help us in the fight against false news. It's a really tough issue to solve, and we appreciate your participation.